The council chamber buzzed with an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the distant hum of the observation rings circling above. Each alien species present, their forms varying from crystalline entities to towering insectoid beings, sat in cold, calculated anticipation. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the final decision on humanity's fate. At the center of the room, a massive hologram flickered to life, showing President Mara Volkov of Earth. She stood on the execution platform, her hands bound, but her head held high, her steely gaze locking with the countless eyes of the alien council. The holographic screen showed no emotion, but her defiance was clear. She had been chosen as the symbol of humanity's refusal to bow, and in the coming seconds she would pay the ultimate price. The lead alien, a being with skin like polished obsidian and angular features, stepped forward, his voice booming through the chamber's silence. His speech was a display of authority, laced with condescension. Humanity's insolence has led us to this moment. President Volkov, you have failed your species. Your resistance is as futile as it is irrelevant. The penalty for your actions will be death. The cold, emotionless tone of the alien leader echoed throughout the chamber, but his words did not fall on deaf ears. There was a visible shift in the room. Some of the council members whispered amongst themselves, their murmurs filled with a barely suppressed sense of unease. Others simply stared ahead, their eyes betraying nothing. They had seen countless executions before. What was one more? The camera on Volkov zoomed in, capturing her battered form. Her face, bruised from the beatings she had endured, was a portrait of resolve. She looked less like a defeated prisoner and more like a warrior standing at the edge of battle. It was clear she would not die easily. Even now, in her final moments, she maintained control. Her voice cut through the air, strong and unwavering. Do you think killing me will break humanity? Do you think we will bow to your will? You have no idea what you're dealing with. The words hung in the air, thick with defiance. There was no hesitation in her eyes, no fear. She had already accepted her fate, but she knew the price of her death would be far higher than the council could comprehend. The alien leader's eyes narrowed as he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The signal was given. The device was activated. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the platform. For a moment, everything in the chamber was consumed by the brilliance of it. The shockwave of energy so powerful it vibrated through the council seats. Volkov's body fell, lifeless, to the ground. Her final moments erased in an instant. A cold wave of satisfaction rippled through the chamber as the screen cut to black. The council members leaned back in their seats, each of them momentarily, lulled into a false sense of victory. It was over. The human threat had been neutralized. But something was off. The silence that followed felt too heavy, too unnerving. A ripple of unease began to spread across the room. The usual quiet aftermath of executions didn't feel like it had before. It wasn't just the death of a leader, it was the death of a symbol, and symbols were dangerous. A low murmur began to rise among the council members. Some exchanged glances, others looked at the central monitor. The feed should have cut off, but it hadn't. For a brief second, the image of Volkov reappeared on the screen, her face still impassive, as if nothing had happened. There was no blood, no body, just the hollow outline of her figure against a black backdrop. The words she had spoken, her final message, echoed once again in the chamber, cutting through the stillness like a razor. You've made a grave mistake. A sudden shift rippled through the council. The alien leader stood up abruptly, his hands twitching. His thoughts seemed scattered, frantic. What is this? Why is the feed still active? His voice, typically so controlled, wavered for a fraction of a second. A lower-ranking member, a figure with elongated, translucent limbs, turned their head toward the council leader. It's It's coming from Earth. They've initiated. The transmission again. The leader's eyes flared with anger and confusion. Impossible! We shut off their communication access. And yet, the broadcast continued. The voice of Volkov rang through the void again, chilling in its finality. We will make you regret this. The council froze, their faces becoming a study in horror. For the first time in their collective history, they had made a mistake, one they couldn't undo. On Earth, the Resolve, a warship now under the command of Lieutenant Cassandra Renner, sat motionless in the shadow of the distant moon. Within the ship's command center, silence reigned as Cassandra stood at her station, her fingers hovering over the console. The display in front of her flickered, showing the same face, the same defiant message still lingering in the darkness. "Commander," a voice crackled through the intercom, "we're receiving an encrypted signal from Earth. It's from the President." Cassandra clenched her fist. It was a command she had been waiting for, but it had come too late. The Council had already acted. "We're not done yet," she muttered to herself, her voice low. But the steel in it was undeniable. Her orders were clear. Earth would respond in kind. The war would be fought on their terms now. At that moment, a pulse of energy shot from Earth's surface, cutting through the fabric of space. An enormous wave of power, unmistakably human in its design, spread outward, beginning to disrupt the galactic network. Lights flickered, systems shut down. The council members exchanged frantic looks, their fear now palpable. They had done more than kill a leader. They had awakened something they could not control. The image on the holographic screen shifted once again. Earth's retaliation had begun, and there was no turning back. The council room was filled with chaos. For the first time in countless eons, the galaxy's most powerful beings were thrown into disarray, their meticulously orchestrated plans unraveling before their eyes. The overwhelming silence was punctuated by the frantic murmur of alien tongues, each voice unsure, every species' sense of control slipping away like sand through their fingers. The alien leader, his smooth obsidian skin now appearing streaked with cracks of anxiety, stood motionless in the center of the chamber. His mind, usually razor-sharp and calculating, was consumed by a single thought. How could they have misjudged humanity so badly? Around him, the council members shifted nervously, their composed, multifaceted minds now filled with dread. Many had dismissed Earth's capacity for retaliation, certain that humanity would buckle under the weight of the galactic order. But now they saw something far more terrifying. A species that had been underestimated and ignored for centuries, one whose leader had just been executed publicly, yet whose defiance still burned like an unyielding flame. The holographic screen, displaying Earth, flickered once more, the words, "We will make you regret this," lingering in the minds of everyone present. It was a chilling promise that reverberated in the walls of the council chamber like the toll of a bell, signaling the beginning of an irreversible war. For a moment, the alien leader's gaze flicked to the chamber's data streams, his mind working. In overdrive, the sudden disruption in galactic communications, an unknown energy pulse, had wreaked havoc across the network, jamming systems and forcing some satellites to power down. Earth's retaliation had begun, but what did it mean? "Activate a full scan of Earth's transmissions," he ordered. His voice clipped, though the fear was barely contained. A high-ranking scientist on the council, a being with translucent skin and flickering lights inside its body, immediately began typing commands into a console. The alien's hands shook slightly, but there was no time to be afraid. They needed answers. The technician's voice was hushed but urgent. We're receiving a signal. The source is Earth's surface. It's human technology, ancient but still functional. There's something else. The pulse is too powerful. It's cloaked." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Cloaked?" How could they have cloaked it? Their tech is primitive. Nothing. Like ours. The technician swallowed, his antennae twitching. It's not just cloaked, Commander. It's as if their technology has been augmented. Augmented. The leader's tone grew sharp. Explain. The technician hesitated, his eyes darting across the room. The signal is evolving. It's integrating with our own systems. It's as if their tech is adapting, bending light and sound in ways we have not seen before. It's as if they are speaking to us in our own language, manipulating our devices. We've never encountered anything like this. The alien leader's thoughts swirled. Humanity had always been underestimated, its technology dismissed as outdated, and its species as little more than a relic of a forgotten world. But this was something different. This wasn't just defiance. This was calculated retaliation, born from a deep well of pain and loss. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were fighting to survive. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft hum from the edge of the chamber. A new transmission had arrived. The holographic screen shifted once again, showing the face of Mara Volkov, though her body was no longer visible. She had been executed, but her voice had been embedded in the transmission, each word carrying the weight of her final promise. You think you've broken us, but you've only awakened a force you cannot control. The words were chilling, and the Council's members stiffened in response. They had underestimated the humans once before, and now they realized they were paying the price. As the transmission ended, the alien leader's mind raced through countless possibilities. What could they have done to prepare for this? What was this hidden technology? The answer came in a flash. The humans had learned from their mistakes. In their desperation, they had hidden their most powerful assets, buried beneath layers of secrecy, forgotten in the dark corners of their history. Meanwhile, on Earth, aboard the Resolve, Lieutenant Cassandra Renner stood at the helm, staring out at the stars. The Resolve was a warship like no other. Ancient in design but re-engineered with humanity's best-kept secrets, it had been hidden in plain sight. There had been no warning, no grandiose declaration of its true purpose. Earth's greatest minds had known that one day the galaxy would come for them, and they had prepared in silence. Renner had been one of the few chosen to understand its true power. It wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's last stand. It was a promise of retaliation that would echo across the galaxy. She knew the truth. The galaxy had no idea what they had just awakened. She turned from the helm, her expression steely. The Resolve was ready, but the rest of Earth's fleet was scattered, unprepared for the onslaught of alien might that was sure to follow. They needed time to regroup, to assemble their forces. Commander Renner, the Eagle Fleet has reported in. They've begun preparations for the counteroffensive, a voice crackled over the intercom. Renner's lips curled into a thin smile. Good, let's get to work. The Resolve wasn't just Earth's weapon, it was the first wave. Humanity's vengeance would be fought in the stars, and it would not be a quiet war. They would strike back against those who had stolen their future and murdered their leader. But more than that, it would be a war of survival. The galaxy had thought them weak. They had thought Earth had been left behind, a forgotten backwater world that had been devoured by its own hubris. But Earth had one thing that the galaxy didn't understand, one thing that would tear through every calculation and every plan the aliens had: the human will to survive. Back in the council chamber, the leader's gaze returned to the hologram of Earth. This time, a new transmission appeared. This one was different. No defiance, no threats. It was a countdown. Each second that passed seemed to weigh heavier than the last. The clock on the screen ticked down, relentless and unyielding. The council leader's heart raced. He knew what this meant. "It's a weapon," he murmured, a sudden chill spreading through his form. They're preparing something catastrophic. The technician, his voice trembling, added, "It's not just a weapon, Commander. It's a message. They're showing us that they can reach us wherever we are, that even if they die, they will make us regret this." The council sat in stunned silence. The fear was palpable now, the dread in the air suffocating. Earth was no longer a backwater planet. It was a sleeping giant, awakening, and they were about to face its wrath. On Earth, as the countdown continued, Lieutenant Renner's fingers danced across the console. The resolve would be the spearhead of their war, but it wasn't enough. They needed more. "Status report on the other warships," Renner demanded, her voice calm but with a steel edge. "Ready for launch, ma'am. We've got 4 fleets mobilizing from Earth's remaining colonies. The Titan is en route from the asteroid belt with our heavy artillery," came the reply. Renner nodded. "Good. Let them come. We're going to make them feel every single moment of regret. The time for diplomacy was over. The galaxy had made its choice when they executed their leader. Now, humanity would show them what it meant to cross a species that had nothing left to lose. The silence in the council chamber stretched far too long, unbearable in its weight. The atmosphere crackled with uncertainty, a sense of dread gnawing at the edges of the alien minds present. They had once viewed humanity as weak, as primitive, a relic of an old and dying world. But now, as the minutes dragged on and the countdown continued to tick toward its inevitable conclusion, the truth of their mistake began to settle into the very core of the council. The lead alien, Commander Zerath, stood at the center of the room, his once calm demeanor shattered. His skin, a glossy shade of deep obsidian, seemed to absorb the light in a way that made him appear even more ominous. His 6 eyes flicked across the chamber, each glance filled with a deepening horror. He had always been confident in the Galactic Council's supremacy, but now, for the first time, doubt was taking root in his thoughts. A low, anxious murmur filled the room as council members shuffled uncomfortably. The countdown, ticking down relentlessly on the central holographic screen, reminded them all that something catastrophic was unfolding. The human message, "We will make you regret this," still echoed in their minds. But the countdown was something new, something different. One of the council members, a species known for their crystalline form and highly developed telepathic abilities, stepped forward. Her voice, usually soft and soothing, now trembled with the weight of fear. "Commander Zerath, we cannot ignore this any longer. Whatever this countdown represents, it is not a threat. It is a declaration of intent. The humans have something far more dangerous than we anticipated." Zerath's jaw clenched. The words were difficult to swallow. A part of him wanted to dismiss her, dismiss all of them. But that part of him was fading, and the other part, the part filled with pure, unfiltered panic, was growing stronger. "Continue scanning Earth," he ordered, his voice a mere whisper, but it carried the weight of his authority. The technician at the console immediately complied, his hands moving rapidly over the controls. His face was pale, his movements erratic. I can't get a clear reading. Their energy signature is fluctuating. It's like nothing we've ever encountered. The more we scan, the more the signal adapts. It's alive." "Alive?" Zerath echoed, his voice strained. He had fought in countless battles, faced enemies that would have crushed the will of lesser civilizations, but this was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. The humans had always been written off as insignificant, even by their own allies. Yet, here they were, shaking the foundations of the galaxy itself. The technician's voice grew more urgent. "Commander, the signal is not just adapting, it's evolving. I'm detecting anomalous fluctuations, patterns, almost like a form of intelligent evolution. It's not merely technology, it's living technology. They've weaponized something organic." Zerath felt his chest tighten. "How long until it reaches full strength?" "Minutes," came the reply. Zerath's mind raced. If the humans were using bioengineered technology, something that could evolve and adapt so quickly, it would render their conventional military strategies useless. Worse, if they had weaponized something that could outsmart the Council's most advanced systems, they would be powerless to stop it. A harsh reality dawned on him. This was not a war. This was the beginning of a reckoning. Back on Earth, the Resolve was ready, its systems humming with an energy that pulsed through every inch of the ship. Lieutenant Cassandra Renner stood at the bridge, her eyes locked on the viewscreen. The stars beyond appeared tranquil, as if they had no knowledge of the storm brewing just beyond their reach. "Lieutenant, status update on the Eagle fleet?" Renner asked, her tone calm, betraying none of the anxiety that churned in her gut. "Fleet is ready, Commander. All ships are reporting in. The Titan will arrive in approximately 2 hours with additional firepower," the voice from the comms officer responded. Renner nodded. The fleet was scattered across the galaxy, but Earth had its strength in numbers. They just had to hold the line long enough to strike. But as the time passed and the countdown continued, the reality of their situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and they would not go quietly. The war had begun, and it was going to be a fight for every star, every system, every scrap of the galaxy. "Commander Renner," the comms officer's voice crackled through, interrupting her thoughts. "The Titan has entered the asteroid belt. We're receiving a direct communication from Earth." Renner's heart skipped a beat. The Titan was Earth's last line of defense, the ship that carried the heaviest artillery. It was supposed to be their strongest weapon, and now it was responding to Earth's final call. "Patch it through," Renner ordered. The comms officer worked quickly, and soon the face of General Ethan Mitchell appeared on the view screen. His expression was grave, but there was determination in his eyes. "Lieutenant Renner, Earth's last gambit is in play. We've activated the Omega Protocol." Renner's eyes widened. The Omega Protocol was a last-ditch measure, a set of ancient technologies that humanity had kept hidden away in case of a worst-case scenario. The protocol had been tested, but never used. It was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. The moment Earth had chosen to activate it, there was no turning back. "You've activated Omega," Renner said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Are you certain?" General Mitchell nodded solemnly. "We had no choice. We're all in, Lieutenant. The countdown has begun, and the fleet is ready. It's time to show the galaxy that they were wrong about us." Renner took a deep breath. "Prepare the Resolve for deployment. The humans aren't going down without a fight." As the communication ended, Renner's mind flashed to the task ahead. Omega wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement, a promise that humanity would fight back against the darkness, that they would no longer be the forgotten species. The galaxy would remember their wrath. Back in the council chamber, Zerath stood at the heart of the chaos, his mind racing. The countdown continued, a constant, unrelenting presence. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice, one that had once belonged to the human leader, President Mara Volkov. "You've made a grave mistake." The words rang in his mind like a bell, tolling the end of an era. And as the final seconds of the countdown ticked down, Zerath could only watch as the first wave of humanity's retaliation was unleashed. Energy surged from Earth's surface, unseen but felt, a pulse of power so intense that it shook the fabric of the galaxy itself. The energy ripped through the stars, sending shockwaves across every system within reach. The Council's advanced technology, its communications, its monitoring systems began to collapse under the weight of the assault. "What is this?" one of the council members gasped. "How could they—" "It's happening," Zerath whispered, his voice hollow. The truth had settled into his bones. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were rewriting the rules of war. The countdown had ended, but the war had only just begun. The galaxy trembled. Xerath stood at the epicenter of the chaos, his mind unable to process the scale of what was unfolding. The energy pulses emanating from Earth had torn through the fabric of space, creating ripples that stretched across the galaxy. The Council's once impenetrable systems had faltered, their once invincible defenses shattered by the force humanity had unleashed. The alien council chamber was now a battlefield of its own, with systems failing one after another. The air, once calm and sterile, now felt thick with dread. For the first time, Xerath's thoughts weren't filled with the pride of leadership, but with the crushing weight of regret. His people had underestimated humanity. They had assumed that Earth's destruction would mark the end of the humans, a species that had been seen as nothing more than a fading star in the vast universe. Yet here they were, shaking the galaxy to its core. He looked to his left, where the technicians scrambled in a desperate attempt to regain control over their systems. But it was futile. The humans had unlocked a force they had never before understood, a blend of technology and sheer willpower that was beyond anything the Council had ever faced. The leader's hands clenched into fists, his body trembling with the realization that their fate was sealed. The resolve had mobilized, and humanity's fleets were now in full force, their assault an unstoppable tide. In less than an hour, Earth had transformed from a backwater planet into a galactic juggernaut. Every corner of the galaxy felt the reverberations of their wrath. "We are losing," Xerath whispered, the words barely leaving his lips before. They were drowned by the shouts of panic in the room. The crystalline member of the Council, who had once been filled with righteous certainty, now stood wide-eyed, hands trembling as she reached for her console. "Their technology, it's beyond us. How could we have been so blind?" Xerath turned away, his gaze falling on the broken screen that had once projected the image of Earth's leader, President Mara Volkov. Her final message still echoed in his mind. "We will make you regret this." That had been her promise. And now it was coming true. Earth's retaliation had been swift and devastating. The Titan, leading the charge, launched its devastating payload, a barrage of energy so concentrated it tore through the Council's flagship like paper. The battleships, once symbols of the Council's unchallenged might, were reduced to rubble in moments. The galaxy had underestimated the depth of humanity's resilience, and now they were paying the price. Lieutenant Cassandra Renner watched the destruction unfold from the bridge of the Resolve. The faces of her crew reflected the somber realization that this wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point in galactic history. Humanity was no longer a forgotten species. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Commander, the Council's flagship has been destroyed," a voice reported from the communications console. "We've received their surrender request." Renner stood still, her gaze fixed on the destruction. Her mind raced, but there was no joy in the victory. She thought of President Volkov, who had been slain so unjustly, her final words now etched into the very fabric of this moment. "Send the message," Renner ordered, her voice cold but resolute. Message was simple, its power undeniable. Humanity will never be erased. We are the reckoning. As the transmission went out, Renner allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. This was not a victory for revenge. It was a victory for survival. Humanity had survived the unimaginable, and now they would rebuild. The Council's leaders, scattered and broken, knew there would be no recovery. Their once pristine systems lay in ruins. The galaxy had watched as their empire crumbled under the weight of humanity's wrath. The power they had once wielded had been destroyed, dismantled piece by a species they had failed to comprehend. Xerath, the leader of the Council, stood alone, the weight of his decisions crashing down on him. The realization that the Council's empire was finished, their long-held reign, now nothing more than a faded dream, settled on him like a cold, unrelenting shadow. Humanity had not only survived, they had thrived, and the galaxy would never forget the day they learned the true strength of Earth's people. As the Council fell, one final image remained in the darkness of space, Earth's bright, unyielding light. It was the symbol of a species that had fought against insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. A reminder that no matter how dark the universe became, humanity would always find a way to fight back, and the galaxy would never again underestimate them. The end.